英文分享可以吧? Thank you. I just wanted to come up here to introduce a little bit about our mission and what we were doing in Taiwan, as well as showing you a brief video before we have our Taiwan team members share with us. Before doing that, I just want to really thank our whole entire church for being such a great help and support for us with Taiwan Mission. This year, it was so great to have so many different people come pray for us and with us, for the commissionings we had on both sides, for the prayer meeting on Wednesday where we were prayed for before we got onto the plane. Thank you so much for your prayers throughout the trip, because many of the prayer requests we had were answered, and I think the team members will speak to that in more detailed way. So we're just really thankful for the church partnership, for coming out and eating food at the night markets and spending a lot of money, and then eating with our sales and for Sunday afternoon lunch. So we're just really grateful for the partnership and the love of the church that helped to support us. To give you a little bit of a picture of what we did in Taiwan before I show the slideshow, what we do when we go is we host an English camp. So when we landed on Friday morning in Taiwan time, about 5 in the morning, but we felt like perfectly fine because of the sita. Yeah. We were feeling really good. We were ready to go to all the 7-Elevens, and I was ready to eat like 茶叶蛋 and everything everywhere, just every 小店. Yeah. So we were really excited, and we just spent the first couple days bonding and getting along with each other. We went to Jiufen on Saturday. We spent some time together as a team. We prayed with each other. We went to attend a church service in Taipei on Sunday before heading to the church on Sunday night. Throughout the week, we were teaching English at 2 different schools, and we were able to teach even with our limited Chinese because of the help of some of the teachers' assistants and the local church volunteers. Then on Thursday and Friday, we shared our testimonies, and we were able to share the gospel also with the students. Then on Saturday and Sunday, we did more ministry in the schools and in the local church. And Monday, Tuesday, for the rest of the week, we spent more time with our TAs. A couple of highlights. I know that was a lot of stuff, but a couple of highlights about this year is we really wanted to build on our continued partnership with the same school and the same church that we've been having our mission trips for the past few years now. So there's a wonderful thing that we've been able to do in the past couple of years. We've been able to go to the same churches and go to the same schools. So many of the students know us from last year or 2 years ago, or maybe even 3 years ago in the case of some. There's one class that actually already graduated from school, so they weren't required to come to our English camp, but they still came, and there were a number of them who came just because they loved their interactions with us in the past few years. So we were able to work together with the church, and some of the ways we did that, we were actually able to invite the students into the church for the first time. So in the past, we haven't had the chance to put on an event at the church for the local school students, but this year we were able to. And many of those students that we only taught English to, and it was separate from the church that we stayed in, we're actually able to bring them into the church. So about 20 students from the local schools came out to the churches to attend a rally at the church that the local youth put on for the children. So it was this wonderful blessing. 4 of those boys stayed overnight, and then one of them stayed overnight again, because they just loved being around not just our American teachers, but also the loving host church. So we're really grateful for that partnership with the churches, and we're able to bridge this gap. So I'll stop talking so that you guys can hear more from our mission team. But before we do that, we're going to show you a brief slideshow with a little bit more so you can get a picture of what we were doing. Thank you.
抱我、安慰我，也鼓励我。那每个礼拜当我回到教会的时候，都可以感受到天父爸爸就是很用力的拥抱我，让我可以很尽情的哭泣，尽情的向他倾心吐意。
All right, hello everyone. So yeah, my name is Kevin, and this is my third year going on Taiwan Missions. So compared to 2 years ago, which was also led by Sunru, this year was just more structured, which was good. And then compared to last year, it was a bit more relaxed, which also had its own benefits. One of its benefits was that on Saturday, as you may have seen in the video, we were able to host another night of events for the students, which I think helped us build stronger relationships with them. Coming into Taiwan, we didn't know how many volunteers we would have. I was told that we would only have 4, and then we had 7 classes, so we wouldn't have enough translators to help. However, when we got there, we had 6 volunteers in addition to some church volunteers, which was great. And that was when one of my prayer requests was answered. The volunteers I had at Senping, which was the middle school I taught at, were Kai Xiang, who was like the magic man, and Huan Qi, who was like my gaming partner. So I was sent to Senping with Josh, and then it wasn't the school that you saw in the video, like with all the orange uniforms and stuff, but I was at first a little disappointed that I was sent there since we didn't have the rest of the team there, and then we were like by ourselves. The first day felt kind of slow because just, first day all the students were shy, they didn't really want to talk, and I didn't really know how to lead the rally time. So during class time, I honestly didn't know how to start, so I had my teaching volunteer, Kai Xiang, do some magic tricks for like 30 minutes or so. So I honestly wasted a lot of time that could have been spent on teaching, but at least they enjoyed it. Each day, teaching became better, and then I became comfortable with the students that if I made a mistake, I wouldn't feel too bad about it, and then they would also laugh about it. And then on Thursday, that was our testimony sharing day. At Josh's class, there were only, I think, 3 students there on that day. And then So at first I was like, maybe they didn't enjoy the camp, so they don't want to come anymore. But on second thought, it was probably because it was just like raining really hard outside because of the typhoon weather. So about Thursday, since we didn't have that many students, Joshua and I combined classes, and Josh he had a really great way of sharing about God, which was comparing him with other superheroes, like the superheroes that we learned about that week. When I was sharing, I noticed that all the students, like you guys are right now, were just staring at me, and I was like, oh, so too many people, that's scary. But I feel like they really enjoyed it and that they listened to what I shared and just took it in. So this year, since we only taught for 1 week compared to 2 weeks in the past, we were able to host activities like the Saturday night one. As Sunru said, there were like 20 students who showed up, and then 5 out of the 8 of my students showed up, which was pretty nice. Although I wasn't able to talk to each person one-on-one, I feel like they were at least able to see the more troll and different side of me. I know this because I checked my phone after the event, and I saw that some of them had posted photos of me doing weird stuff, which was interesting. I found that night to be a very important part of our Taiwan short-term mission, since we are able to interact with them at church instead of just telling them that there's a church that they can go to. Although I have already mentioned this earlier in my Facebook post, I would like to ask again for some prayers. One of them is that we had a positive impact on the students and that they would want to come attend church more and just stay in the church. And the second thing is please pray for the fasting event that our host church, Luman Church, will host later this month from the 23rd to the 25th. Some of our students signed up for it, and I was really glad to hear that. Finally, I would like to thank every member of our team, including our Taiwanese helpers, for just being flexible and being such a joy to work with. Thank you to everyone who supported us through prayers and also just financial donations. Our success would not have happened without the support of you guys, the church. All right, that's all. Thanks for listening.
Hi, so I'm Josh. I actually just got back from China 2 days ago, or actually Japan first, but so I'm still really jet lagged, but I managed to put together this testimony just like Kevin. So, and just like Kevin said, we were at the same school, so we have a lot of things in common, but hopefully we cover a little bit of different ground so you get to see it from 2 different perspectives. So one of the biggest things that I was worried about before the trip was that there would be a really big language barrier between me and the students. And that was intensified by the fact that Kevin says that we only had 2 translators, but before we had 4. And I had been really scared that something would happen. And my fears were basically confirmed when 2 of our translators basically had to leave because of a family emergency. So we were left with just half the translators, and we had to get by with basically just doing all the lessons in essentially Chinese. Sometimes we had to stop and figure out how to translate something using Google Translate in the middle and be very awkward and quiet, and the kids would just be staring straight at you to make it more awkward. Because they're middle schoolers, right? And they're just trying to get time on their to text in on their phones, right? But what I ended up finding was that on the 2nd or 3rd day, we were trying to make sentences. I had them come up to the chalkboard and try to make sentences using the words that we had learned that day. And what actually ended up happening was they started making jokes towards the politicians of Taiwan. I don't know if a lot of, I feel like some of you guys would know, but Taiwan's political landscape is just very kind of ridiculous on some levels. So they just started, because the names end up getting translated through just raw translations. So it's names like Korea fish, or like, right, Hanguo Ye. And so right there, it was amazing because I saw like this kind of like the clouds parted in their eyes, and they really started to pay attention because they were really engaged in this political activity. But after that, it was like a whole different class, because after that, it wasn't even like I was dealing with middle schoolers anymore, because I know that I could never be this respectful in middle school. It was just amazing to see how much they were paying attention. And it was unfortunate that they weren't able to come on Thursday because it was like raining cats and dogs, and also there was thunder and lightning. But they were able to come on Friday, and that was when I was able to give like a second testimony just to my class. And I'm so glad I did, because it actually ended up, like Kevin said, bringing a lot more kids to our Saturday night event. And that was the second thing I was worried about. I was scared that I wouldn't be able to share my testimony in a convincing way. And God answered that prayer as well, since I not only found myself able to talk about like myself on a very sensitive level, but also able to very much overcome that language barrier. Like, I was able to say words that I had never, like, I'd only heard like once before, like things like depression, things like kind of like overcoming struggles that are like words in Chinese that aren't used as much as English. And I was really glad for that, because it really felt like God was there next to me, putting words into my mouth so that I was lessened and God's will was magnified. And actually, I was so glad for that, because after the trip, when I was still touring around like Taiwan and around Japan, I actually ended up getting texts from a lot of the kids saying that they were still attending the church, or the kids that had gone to church that Saturday were still going because of the fellowship. And it really felt as if, because I feel like I would never have been able to do that just on my own. And it was really the work of God moving through me to get to those kids. So one big prayer request that I'm hoping that you guys will help me pray for is that these kids who are still attending church become a gateway, a way for the rest of the kids in my class and in Kevin's class, since they were pretty close, to really find God together and bring them all to church eventually. Thank you.
大家好, I'm Tiffany. Nice to meet you. So, when I first heard of the idea of Taiwan Missions, I initially joined because Joanna, my friend, forced me to. I thought about it for a while, but I kind of put off signing up until kind of the last minute because of two reasons. So first of all, I'm a very big procrastinator, but I also was really scared to return to Taiwan because I'm actually like, I wasn't born in Taiwan, but I used to spend like a lot of my childhood there. My mom used to take me around, but like something happened and I stopped going after like 7 years of staying there, and I was a little bit nervous to return because I carried kind of a negative perception of the people there, and yeah. So as most of you guys know, I taught with Grace. She was my teaching partner. We ended up teaching Class E, which is a class for students that really didn't know that much English. One of our biggest struggles with this class is that our kids were of a really big, wide age range, which was really difficult because Grace and I were expecting to kind of be teachers for kids that were really young and really like innocent, but we ended up being with people who were only 3 years younger than me. And I'm not very funny now, so to the students, they didn't think I was that funny either. So a lot of our activities didn't appeal to them. And we could definitely see how some of the games we played kind of made them bored, or it didn't really hit the spot, you know? So Grace and I are pretty sensitive, and we kind of freak out about a lot of things, so we were like, oh no! So before our class on Wednesday, we ended up getting together and praying a lot. And I ended up praying individually a lot too, and I asked God to lower the walls that the students had put up against us. I ended up praying to God a lot about, I ended up asking God a lot for help because I felt like I was really unworthy as a vessel. I felt like I wasn't competent enough to share the gospel, especially as someone who didn't really grow up in the church. And God answered my prayers in a really weird way, but you know, he kind of does that a lot. So on Tuesday, a student, her name is Nellie, she came in crying during break time, and Alice, our teaching assistant, shout out to Alice, she's really nice. She ended up taking her out and talking to her. She was like, oh, are you okay? What's wrong? Honestly, right now, I'm just so grateful that we had someone as compassionate and caring as Alice, because I just know that Nellie needed Alice in that moment. God really placed her there perfectly, because Grace and I definitely wouldn't have been able to help her out and figure out what was going on with our kind of awkward Chinese and like weird talking Google Translate. It would have been really bad. But we ended up finding out that there's another girl in Will and Mingrong's class that called her names and said a lot of like weird stuff like, oh, you know, like you don't shower, stuff like that. And so as a team, we kind of discussed what happened. And Grace and I decided to talk to her during break so that the other girl who was saying this stuff to her wouldn't be able to talk to her. I ended up sitting down with her and getting to know her, and we picked out an English name for her together. It was probably one of the best interactions with the kids that I had had so far, and it helped me personally with rebuilding a lot of my confidence to talking to the other kids. Later on, toward the end of the second half of Wednesday, we ended up talking to the other kids about food, which is a universal conversation starter, and also Grace and my experiences in America. So when we were talking to these kids, we were like, oh, we love Taiwan. They were really surprised when we were saying that, but we were like, oh, you know, like, 炸鸡, you know, yes. We were like, yeah, that stuff is really good. But they're like, oh, you know, we really want to go to America. We don't, like that stuff is just kind of something that we're used to. Later, we talked to one of the volunteers, another one of the church volunteers, Wen Shan, and she was like, oh, everyone in Taiwan kind of wants to leave Taiwan. They want to go to America for things like college, but they don't have enough money for things like that. But I think this really opened my eyes personally, and God definitely changed my perspective of my personal experiences too, because I realized how lucky I am that my parents decided to come here from Taiwan and that they were able to, and that I was, I guess I just fully appreciated for once how truly blessed that we all are to be able to live in America. And I realized overall, Grace and I ended up bonding a lot closer to our kids than I expected to. And it really amazed me how much I was truly able to feel all the love and the warmth that Jesus provides for all of his children, even those that didn't know him as well yet. And one prayer request I actually have is that a lot of our kids, they lived really far from the school. They lived on top of the mountain, which was like an hour drive away. So they ended up not being able to attend the church event. So I would like to ask you guys to all pray that God is still able to kind of work his magic within their hearts, and he's still able to kind of touch them, and that they're able to find a church that is closer to them. So yeah, thank you.